Week 6 of the fantasy football season. Here's quarterback starts at every matchup this week. First matchup Thursday night, Philadelphia Eagles at the Giants. Division matchup. Jalen Hurts, he's been a great fantasy option this season. Once again, where he runs the football, obviously he could throw the football. And obviously him and A.J. Brown haven't been on the same page. But this week I think they both get on the same page. And Hurts versus Giant defense that can't stop anyone's an easy start. Jackson Dart is sit. Last week was a mediocre game at the New Orleans Saints for Jackson Dart, and there's not a lot of options in this offense. Obviously, Malik Neighbors out for the season, and Darius Slayton getting hurt last week. So the number one option in the passing game, arguably, is Theo Johnson. And this week in a tough matchup versus one of the better defenses in the league, he's a sit as the rookie quarterback. Denver Broncos, New York Jets, London ball game. Bo Nix to start. Last couple weeks, he's starting to get it going. Is Bo Nix, where I thought a little too fancy. He was trying to get a little bit thrown out of the pocket the first few weeks, but now Nix, he's calmed it down. This week, a great matchup versus the Jets in London, where those ball games are usually high scoring, and this Jet defense can't stop anyone, and they haven't created one turnover as well this season. So Nix in a good matchup, an easy start. Justin Fields to start. I know on paper not a great matchup, but Fields with his rushing ability and just in garbage time, the last few weeks he's been up there in fantasy points, over 25 fantasy points 2 weeks in a row for Justin Fields. So I think we could see more of the same when New York's trailing early and often, and then in garbage time, obviously when teams play prevent and just want the clock to chew out, teams get yards, and obviously that's what could happen with Fields once again versus the Broncos. And also, like I said, with his rushing upside weekly, he's a guy that usually cracks that top 12, 14 range in starting quarterback. Seattle Seahawks at the Jaguars, Sam Darnold to start. Last week a big game it was for Sam Darnold, and a tough loss in that one versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Sam Darnold, Jackson Smith, and the Jigba locked in. Cooper Kupp still could go out there, make a few plays here and there. And he has a good backfield to Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. And A.J. Bonner's become one of his better targets as well, especially in the red zone. So with all those factors, and this Jaguar team, middle of the pack defense, they do create turnovers but give up points as well. I like Darnold as a start. Trevor Lawrence to start. He finally had his coming out party and a big victory versus the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. Especially that play where he got stepped on by his lineman, fell, got up somehow, broke a tackle, and ran it in for a 1-yard touchdown, which obviously was the game-winning touchdown. So he had a monster game, like I said, over 25 fantasy points, 3 touchdowns. Him and Brian Thomas starting to get on the same page once again. I know Brenton Strange went out. We don't know if he's going to be back in this week's ball game, but Trevor Lawrence with his running ability, and this guy is a competitor, even though it doesn't look great at times. This week versus Seattle Seahawks defense that hasn't been great of late, he's a start. Chargers at the Dolphins, Justin Herbert to start. I think they're going to throw the football even more now with Amari and Hampton out at least a month with the ankle injury. And this Dolphins secondary is depleted, going back to training camp with injuries, and they can't stop anyone. So this week, Herbert an easy start. Tua is sit. This is a tougher matchup for Tua. I thought the last couple weeks he's looked good as Tua, but this is a matchup where Tyreek Hill obviously would have been a big part of this offense and help beat this secondary. So this week, he's a sit as Tua. Not a great matchup. I know he's been a good quarterback at home in terms of putting up fantasy points. Is Tua throughout the last couple seasons, but this week I can't trust him 100% in a tough matchup versus Los Angeles. And like I said, down, obviously Tyreek Hill, Los Angeles Rams at the Ravens. Matthew Stafford starting to get it going. Last week another big game, it was for Stafford, over 30 fantasy points. Him and Puka Nacua locked in. Devontae Adams, he's going out there making plays. And then even Kyren Williams last week, he got involved in the receiving game and had a receiving touchdown as well. So this week, Stafford is the depleted Baltimore Raven defense. He's an easy start. Cooper Rush is sit. I'm expecting Rush is going to start once again for this Raven team, where the reports were 2 to 3 weeks Lamar Jackson was going to be out. This Raven team 1-4 at this point. I don't think they should really push Lamar, even though we've seen crazier things happen where teams are way out of it and make the playoffs. But this week it looks like a Cooper Rush game. And Cooper Rush, he's not a bad quarterback, but he's just not a viable fantasy option. Arizona Cardinals at the Indianapolis Colts. Kyler Murray is start for me in this one. I know he got banged up in last week's tough loss versus Tennessee Titans. Went to the locker room for a bit, but got back in the ball game as Kyler Murray. And Murray, he's a player that's played through injuries throughout his career, on and off. Tough quarterback, no doubt about it. Decent matchup in Indianapolis. I know the Colts defense has been way better at home than it's been on the road. over the last couple seasons. But when you got a guy like Trey McBride and Harrison, it can make your job easier. So just something to watch with the foot injury. But I still think Kyler Murray will start this week. Daniel Jones to start. At home, he's been great this season, Daniel Jones. Him and Michael Pittman locked in. Jonathan Taylor making everything easy as well for Daniel Jones, where teams got to respect the run big time with Jonathan Taylor, and that just opens up the passing game. And also Tyler Warren, he's been a great rookie tight end as well to begin the season. So with all that happening for this Indianapolis Colts team, Daniel Jones, a good start. And also we know he has some rushing upside as well. Dallas Cowboys at the Panthers, Dak Prescott, he's having some type of season to begin the year. And he went into New York. I know it's a bad New York Jet team, but Dak went out there, had a monster ball game, over 30 fantasy points last week, spreading the football out. And he's been doing this the last few weeks without CeeDee Lamb in the lineup. So imagine when he comes back to the lineup, the numbers he's going to put up. So this week in a great matchup at the Panthers, where their defense can't stop anyone as well, he's an easy start. Bryce Young, a fringe option. We know Dallas, one of the worst defenses in the league as well, and can't stop anyone. But Bryce Young, limited weapons. I know they got Ted McMillan, great wide receiver so far in his rookie season. He's looked good. Xavier Legette did score a touchdown last week, and possibly Coker coming back to the lineup. But Bryce Young, just the upside hasn't been great. And even in a great matchup on paper versus the Dallas Cowboys, he's a fringe option. New England Patriots at the New Orleans Saints, Drake May a start. Last week, May didn't throw for the touchdowns and put up the numbers, but this guy, he could be a big-time quarterback. He's Drake May, no doubt about it. We've seen him go out there, the poise in the pocket, spreading the football around, and some of these throws on the run and tough situational throws he made in that game at Buffalo. So Drake May's got the full package and some rushing ability as well. And this week in a great matchup at a bad team at New Orleans, he's an easy start. Spencer Rattler, a sit. He hasn't been totally bad as Spencer Rattler. He goes out there, competes. The Saints have been in some of these games. They came back and won last week from a 14-3 deficit versus the New York Giants. But this week versus a good defense coached by Mike Vrabel that definitely turned this team around, he's a sit. Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dillon Gabriel, I thought he looked good in his pro debut last week in different circumstances. Overseas game, tough matchup versus Minnesota, led by Robert Flores as a defensive coordinator. And he went out there, made some plays, scored 2 touchdowns with Dillon Gabriel. But the only thing with him is he didn't really obviously stretch the field with a lot of short routes, a lot of out routes they were running with this Cleveland Brown team. And this week it's going to be a tough matchup at the Steelers, led by TJ Watt, Ramsey, Hayward, and Darius Slay on that defense. He's not a quarterback in his second start of his career to go to Pittsburgh. I trust he's a sit. Aaron Rodgers a sit. We know the upside isn't great for Rodgers. Still a quarterback that could swing the rock, get the football to his number one target in DK Metcalf. But this is a great defense of the Cleveland Browns, where they're not giving up a lot of points, and they make you earn a lot. And Aaron Rodgers, we know as well, the mobility is gone. So if Myles Garrett could get back there a couple times, he's going to take Rodgers down for a sack. And also, like I said, this is a run first still type of team more weeks than not. Tennessee Titans at the Raiders. Cam Ward is it. Last week Cam Ward showed poise in the pocket. He made some big plays down the stretch. He got his first career win at the Arizona Cardinals. But this week, even in a great matchup at the Vegas Raiders, and Calvin Ridley finally had a breakout game, over 120 yards receiving last week. He's a sit. Geno Smith a sit. Geno Smith, I thought, was going to be an upgrade for this offense over there in Vegas. I know Brock Bowers, he wasn't 100% since week 1, missed last week's ball game as well. But Geno Smith, the accuracy isn't there. He's pressing too much, and he's throwing a ton of interceptions, even in a great matchup on paper versus Tennessee. What we've seen from Geno the last few weeks here, he's an easy sit. San Francisco 49ers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think Brock Purdy's going to play in this game, where he's still banged up. And Mac Jones is playing well, 3-0 as a starter for this 49er team. And we saw him go in there last week at the Los Angeles Rams and pull off a great upset victory. This week at Tampa Bay, I believe will be a high-scoring game between these two teams. But Mac Jones, to really have 100% trust in him, unless it's a 2-quarterback league, then I could say obviously go in there and start him. But this week, in your basic 12, even 14-team leagues, he's a fringe option. Even in a decent matchup at Tampa, Baker Mayfield, start each and every week. It doesn't matter who's out there at receiver. If Evans is in and out of the lineup, if obviously he's got Bucky Irvin not in the lineup, he went out there last week in a tough environment in Seattle, and him and Emeka Buka make some big plays. Chris Godwin still getting his legs on the room, but this week in a matchup versus a mediocre secondary of San Francisco, Baker's a start each and every week. Cincinnati Bengals at the Packers. Jake Browning is sitting this ball game. Browning really hasn't showed much. I know last week him and Chase finally connected on some big plays, but the thing is that was garbage time. Detroit was up big in the fourth quarter in that game, and this week in the matchup, at arguably the best defense in the league at the Green Bay Packers, going to Lambeau. He's a sit. Jordan Love a start. Jordan Love's having a good season for this Green Bay Packer team, a quarterback that spreads the football out, makes the reads, make the right plays, and he's coming off a monster game as well, where him and Romeo Doubs tore up that Cowboy defense before the bye. We threw 3 touchdowns to him. So this week, coming off a bye week, his weapons all healthy. Even Christian Watson possibly could return as a deep ball threat for this offense. He's a start versus one of the worst defenses in the league, Detroit Lions at the Chiefs. Jared Goff is a start in this game, even though I think he's going to be a low-end option. Is Jared Goff. And Goff, he's had a couple mediocre games here and there, Goff, and a couple good games as well. And this week at Kansas City, I think Kansas City, they're going to try to zero in on stopping Jahmyr Gibbs. And we saw last week Trevor Lawrence go out there, have a big game where they stopped Travis Etienne, and Lawrence made big plays. So this week, Goff, even in a tough matchup, where his ceiling some weeks isn't high than others with the matchup, depending, and on the road, still will be a start. Patrick Mahomes is starting this game. Mahomes having a great season, putting up elite fantasy numbers once again after the last 2 seasons. The numbers have been down. Rashee Rice back in the lineup, and guys have been in and out of the lineup once again, and Kelsey's not really doing much this season. Buffalo Bills at the Falcons, Josh Allen a start. We know he's number 1 quarterback, number 2 quarterback coming into the season off the board. Last week, definitely New England, they played him well. He still had over 20 fantasy points with the 2 turnovers, was Josh Allen. And this week, in a matchup where Atlanta's defense isn't that great, especially on the fast track, indoors, a great start. Michael Penix is it. We haven't seen enough from Penix to be a consistent fantasy option. He had a couple decent games so far this season. This offense getting healthier. Drake London, Darnell Mooney, they need that rest at the bye week where they've been dealing with injuries. Kyle Pitts has been decent so far this season. You got Bijan out of the backfield. But this week, after a bad loss for Buffalo, I think they go into Atlanta, and it's going to be a tough ball game for Penix and this offense. And the final game of the week, Chicago Bears at the Commanders. Caleb Williams, in terms of a real-life quarterback, I don't think he's been that good. Is Caleb Williams holds on to the football a lot, not accurate, not into the playbook a lot. But they got great options in his offense. Him and Rome Odunze, for sure, they have great rapport, making big plays. DJ Moore still could go out there and make plays. And we'll see if some of these rookies like Luther Burden and Colston Loveland could emerge in this game. Because I've said this as well, after bye weeks, rookies are more in the playbook and get more involved in these ball games. And to Jaden Daniels, he's a start. Came back last week. Not a great game. I know he had a game-clinching touchdown towards the end, but if he didn't get that, was Jaden Daniels. It definitely was going to be a down game for him. But this week versus a bad defense that isn't that great and can't stop anyone. Daniels, he was a top 3-4 quarterback off the board in your fantasy drafts, and he's a start this week. So that's quarterback starts at every matchup for week 6 of the fantasy football season.